And now let's prepare for a time of meditation.
I am love. I am love. I am love. I am love. Free to be the voice of love. Free to make the choice of love. I am peace. I am peace. I am peace. I am peace. Free to be the voice of peace. Free to make the choice of peace. I am whole. I am whole. I am whole. I am whole. I am love. I am love. I am.
Deep, deep, deep breath in now. And hold it for just a moment. Hold it if you can. And then slowly, slowly exhale. Slowly exhale and begin the process of relaxing this morning, of letting go, of settling into a time that's for you and God, for you and the universe, for you and the one source, the one presence, the one power, for you to sit and be in communication, for you to meditate, to pray, to look deeper, to relax. I relax now. I begin to focus on the breath, the breathing in, the breathing out, that breath of God, that breath of the universe, that first breath, that breath that's always there, ever present, the in, the out of the breath, the calming relaxation of the breath that begins relaxing the body, letting the body settle in and let go of any stress or tension that may be hiding somewhere within the body. I become aware of any spot in my body now that I can send energy to, that I can send love to, that I can send peace and joy to, and let that tension go. Any stress that's in my body, I breathe into it now. And as I exhale, I let it go. I let it go. I drop the shoulders, drop the belly, allow the chin to relax. And the mind begins to clear, to settle down a bit. The thoughts slow down. The thoughts slow down, and I capture a space in between each one. And as I capture each space, I feel it. I feel the space in between the thought. And I feel love. Love. Love flows through me now. And I welcome it. I choose it. I am love. I am love. As the thoughts settle down and the mind stills and as the body relaxes, love fills my being. Love is always there. But right now I become acutely aware of that love. I become acutely aware of that love. It fills the very core of my being. Love overflows within me. And as love overflows within me, I allow it to drift out to all of those on this Zoom call, to drift out to the entire state of California, to drift out to someone special that I hold in my mind right now. I choose love. Settling in now to that love, I begin to allow the breath to take over once more. The breathing in and breathing out. The love of the universe. The love of the silent time. In the silent time now, I sit in the midst of this love. In the silent time now, I find refreshment and renewal in this love. In the silent time now, I sit in the silence, in love. Breathing in, breathing out. Breathing in love, breathing out love. Being love. Beginning the journey back to this present moment now. I am love, and that love comes with me. That love is always there. And as I begin to wiggle the fingers and wiggle the toes and begin to move my extremities slightly, I know that love. I choose that love. I bring that love to everywhere I go, to everyone I see. breathing in and breathing out, and slowly allowing the lies to come open. I say, thank you, God. Thank you, God, for love. Thank you, God, for love. And so it is. Amen.
I am the thinker who thinks the thought that changes things that shape my life. I am the thinker who thinks the thought I have the power to change my life. I am the thinker who thinks the thought that changes things that shape my life. I am the thinker who thinks the thought I have the power to change my life. And if you ask me who am I am wisdom, I am light. You know that I am more than meets the eye. I cannot be defined. I am the thinker who thinks the thought that changes things that shape my life. I am the thinker who thinks the thought I have the power to change my life. And if you ask me what am I am beauty, I am joy. You know that I am more than meets the eye. I cannot be defined. I am the thinker who thinks the thought that changes things that shape my life. I am the thinker who thinks the thought I have the power to change my life. 'Cause I can choose to be the light that brightens someone's darkest night. You know there's so much more than meets the eye. I cannot be defined. I am the thinker who thinks the thought that changes things that shape my life. I am the thinker who thinks the thought I have the power to change my life. Oh yeah, I have the power to change my life. Oh, I have the power to change my life. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you.
Thank you.
One of my favorite songs, thank you. One of my favorite songs because it's so true. It's so true. So come back next week and hear more about the law of mind action. If I can give a brief commercial there. Yes. Come back next week and sing that too, Sue. And
Thank you.
without further ado, I'm excited. Let's welcome Rabbi Rami Shapiro. Thank you for being here, Rabbi.
My pleasure, Reverend Rich. The music was great. I mean, that was fantastic. So I'm assuming I'm not muted.
You're good.
I'm good. Okay. I am good. All right. So I have this fear that everything I'm going to say this morning, Reverend Richard has already said, that you've probably heard 100 times. So I'm wondering what are you going to get from this? But I'm going to share my thoughts with you anyway. And maybe it's the way I do it that might be of value, or some nuance that might be fresh. We'll see. Because if you look at the 4 questions that are at the heart of everyone's spiritual search, who am I? Where did I come from? Where am I going when I die? And how should I live while I'm still alive? The answer to the first 3 are all the same. The answer to the first 3 are God. Who am I? God. Where did I come from? God. Where am I going when I die? God. And then the 4th one is, how do I live? Godly. I mean, it's all a variation on a theme, which begs the question then, who or what is God? And that's what we're going to focus on for the next 20 minutes or so. And I'm going to take the perspective, I'm going to use primarily Bible language. But I think what I'm going to say is true from the mystical traditions of every religion, though not all religions use the word God. And I want to start with something you've probably read a million times. When the story of Moses at the burning bush. When Moses has his encounter with the divine at the burning bush, Moses asks, what's your name? Right? The commandment that Moses gets from whatever this thing is that's speaking to him through a bush is to go and liberate the enslaved. So the first thing we know about God in this parable, I don't take these things as history, I take them as story, but parable, the first thing we know about this power in this parable is that it's a power for liberation. So when you have this encounter, you liberate the enslaved. And where are they enslaved? They're enslaved in Egypt in English. But when you read the Bible in Hebrew, the word is Mitzrayim. And it's a pun. A lot of Hebrew words in the Bible are puns, word plays. And Mitzrayim literally means from the narrow places of your life. So it's not just liberating a specific people from a specific place at a specific time. It's the power of the divine is a liberating power for everyone from wherever they're enslaved to the narrow places of their life, however you define that. And then Moses says to this force that's nameless at this juncture, says, so I have to tell the people, who I was talking to. If I go back and I say, and he's been absent for a very, very long time. He ran away. So he's coming back and he says, I was talking to this shrub and the shrub said, I'm going to take you out of here. And they're going to go, oh yeah, you were talking to a shrub. No, you were smoking the shrub and we're not going to listen to you. So he says, who should I say sent me? And God responds with two names, but they're not names the way you and I normally think of names, because we think of names as proper nouns. But in the Hebrew, the two names that God reveals are verbs. And when Moses asks for the name of God, he's actually saying, what's the essence? What's the essence of divinity? And that's what's revealed in the story. So the first name that's revealed in Hebrew is Ehyeh, and it's usually Ehyeh Asher, Ehyeh, and it's translated as the I am that I am. That's how we get it in English. You can't actually say I am in Hebrew because Hebrew doesn't have a present tense. It's too static. So while there's no good English translation, so we say, I am what I am becoming, or I am what I am, or whatever, something like that. The actual Hebrew, to try to capture the dynamism of the word itself, Ehyeh, you'd have to say something like, and it's awkward, but it's like eyeing, like a gerund, I with an ing attached to it. So it's eyeing, forever eyeing. It's this dynamic first person infinite eyeing of the universe. And then as soon as God reveals that essence of the divine, you can imagine God, if we are watching it on a video, you could see Moses' face going, what is eyeing? And so then God comes up with an alternative. All right. And then that's when he says, try the unpronounceable name of God, the YHVH in English letters, of the Yud-He, Vav-He in Hebrew letters. But that's also a noun. In English, we translate it, though it's not really a translation. I'll come back to that. But in English, we say it's Lord. So that's how you get it in English. It's whenever you see the word Lord in the Bible with a capital L referring to the divine, that's what they're referring to, the unpronounceable four-letter name of God. But that is a euphemism that was created by rabbis centuries after the Bible story was written. What God actually says is we don't know, we can't pronounce it, but the word that's given in the Bible is another verb. It's the same verb as Ehyeh, the first word that God reveals, but it's a different tense. So Ehyeh is first person of the verb to be, and the Yud He Vav He, the YHVH, is third person verb to be. So it's like, well, the way it was taught to me, it's when you look at the universe around you or within you, when you're the subject looking at the universe as an object, the thing that you see, the multitude of the reality that you see within and without, that's Yud He Vav He. That's YHVH. That's the divine happening. That would be a good translation of the actual Hebrew, not Lord, which is something the rabbis imposed on this unpronounceable word. They said, we have to say something. So let's just say Lord, because Lord is masculine and the rabbis were men, and Lord is hierarchical, and the rabbis were at the top of the hierarchy of power in ancient Judaism. We like this word, Lord, because it sounds like us. So they used it. But the actual Hebrew is a verb. It's more like happening. Just like there's the first person would be eyeing, eye happening. The second word would, the Yud He Vav He, the YHVH, would be more like that happening, the universe happening. So everything you see now, everything you see around you, or if you're looking within you, everything you see is the happening of the divine. That's the Yud He Vav He, YHVH. The seer is the Ehyeh. But the seer, as soon as the seer becomes an object of conversation, is no longer Ehyeh. This is where it gets tricky. The seer is the unseen seer. The seer is the perpetual subject that cannot be turned into an object, even though I'm talking about it as if it were an object, right? So you can't really do that. So you can only be the seer, but you can't even say, oh, I am the seer, because as soon as you do that, you've made an object out of it. There's no separation between you and the seer. And as soon as you imagine one, you've lost contact with the actual Ehyeh. And I don't know if that makes sense, but that you can put something in the chat box if you want and say, what? I don't get it. And I can try again. But the divine we're talking about is everything. There's nothing that isn't a happening of God, and including you. But on a much deeper level, you are the I that's making it all happen. It's just not the egoic you. So let's see if I can make this a little more understandable. I don't know if any of you have ever been to Israel, but if you ever get to go, there's, the last time I went to Israel, I led an interfaith trip. And if you're a Protestant Christian and you want to see where Jesus was buried, you want to go to what's called the Garden Tomb. That's run by the Anglican Church. If you're not a Protestant Christian, if you're anything else, Catholic, Orthodox Christian of one kind or another, then you want to go to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And all the Protestant denominations and all the Orthodox and Catholic denominations, they battle it out over where Jesus was crucified and where Jesus was buried, because they want to control these different spots. It's all about power, nothing about history. It's all about power. But we were an interfaith group. We had Protestants and Catholics and Jews and Buddhists, and we had everybody. So we wanted to go to both places. And to me, it doesn't matter. I think all places are holy. I loved all of them. So we went to the Garden Tomb. And like I said, it's run by the Anglican Church. And they're very serious about who gets to tell you about the Garden Tomb. The Garden Tomb, it's just like it says in the Bible. It's this beautiful garden of Gethsemane. It's a gorgeous garden. And there are literal tombs carved into the mountainside. And just like it says in the Bible, where the women go and they see they're going to go to Jesus is dead and he's buried, and they're going to go to anoint his body, and they find that the rock placed in front of the tomb has been rolled away. I don't know how you imagine it, but I always thought of it as this giant boulder, in front of the tomb. But tombs are actually there. Tombs from 1,000, 2,000 plus years ago. Tombs are there. And what you see when you go there is that the tombs had like a trough cut across the ground in front of them, where there used to be, and there's one now, but there used to be like a big giant wheel of cheese, but there were wheels of stone that rolled around on the trough. So you could wheel the tomb open and closed pretty easily. So it wasn't this giant, big, flat boulder that had to be moved. It was no miracle necessary. You could move the tomb, you could move the rock. So anyway, you could go there, you could see how it was set up, and you could actually walk into any of the tombs. And one of them, they argue, was where Jesus was buried. And only Anglican guides certified by the church, the Anglican Church, are allowed to take you through. I have no idea why, but they're very rigid about this. So any guide who's leading your tour is not even allowed to walk with you into the tomb, into the garden. They have to stay in a shack. They call it the guide shack, and an Anglican guide walks you through. The Anglican guide that we had on our interfaith tour was anything but interfaith. He made a point of telling us in the very beginning that the Anglican Church was the only true religion, and that everyone else was wrong, and that if you wanted to find the true way to God, he would convert anyone who wanted to be converted while we were there at the garden. And it was really obnoxious. And I tried to explain to him that, we were an interfaith group, but he didn't care. We were either you had it, but what he called the true rock, or you didn't, and he was going to present it to us. And he said, he made a point saying, I can help you with your unbelief. Anyway, he and I did not hit it off well. And at some point, I won't go into all the details, but at some point I left the tour because I knew I was just going to have this argument with him and it would ruin everyone's experience. So I left. I've been there several times. I walked away and I was meditating in the garden. And I'm sitting cross-legged in this beautiful part of the garden, just quietly meditating. And I hear this voice, and it's a woman's voice. And in Judaism, the voice of God is called a bat kol. It's called the daughter's voice. It's a woman's voice. And I'm sitting there and I hear this woman's voice, and she says, "Are you the rabbi?" And I'm thinking, yes, I am the rabbi. It's like I'm having this giant ego trip that God is finally recognizing me as the rabbi to the, whatever. So that passes quickly. I mean, it's embarrassing to say, but that's what happened. I opened my eyes, and it's another Anglican guide, a woman this time. And she had heard that I had this altercation with the other guide, and she wanted to convert me to the true rock. And so she offered me what's called C.S. Lewis's trilemma. You may have heard of this. It's something that C.S. Lewis came up with during the Blitz in World War II. And it's in his book, Mere Christianity, where he poses the question, when Jesus says in the Gospel of John, when Jesus says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life, no one can come to the Father except through me," is Jesus lying? Is he a lunatic, or is he Lord? And the assumption that C.S. Lewis makes, and this woman, Anglican priest, was making, was nobody would say that Jesus is a liar. I mean, I wouldn't. And nobody would say Jesus is a lunatic. I wouldn't. So the only option is the third one, that you have to then admit Jesus is Lord. But I wouldn't. So I said to her, I understand what you're offering me, but I think I reject the three choices. I think there's a fourth choice. And to her credit, she said, what's the fourth choice? She'd never heard of a fourth choice. And I said that when Jesus says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life," He's not speaking in English. He's speaking in Aramaic, and which is a cognative Hebrew. And his reference is Jewish, not Christian. His reference is Jewish, and his reference is to the Ehyeh, found in Exodus chapter 3, verse 14, when Moses asks God, what's your name? And God says, Ehyeh, I am. When Jesus says, I am, he's talking about the infinite I-ing of the universe. He's identifying not with Jesus, the egoic Jesus consciousness. He's identifying with the Christ consciousness, with the divine mind. And he's saying the divine mind, the I consciousness, or the I am consciousness, or the Ehyeh consciousness, or the I-ing consciousness, the eternal subject of the universe that manifests the entire thing, that this consciousness is the way, the truth, and the life. And nobody gets to experience the divine unless you what Paul would say, put on the mind of Christ, unless you also enter into that state of consciousness, which you can do because you're also a part of that consciousness, because everything is a part of that consciousness. So this was news to her. But again, to her credit, she said she was interested. She said, well, I'd never heard of that before. I'm going to have to think about that. And she walked away. But that's what I'm talking about. That's what I think Jesus was talking about. That's what all the great mystics are talking about. And when you answer the question, who am I? The truest answer is you are that, tat tvam asi in the Sanskrit. You are that consciousness that manifests the universe. That's who you really are. You're not Rich. You're not Rami. You're not, Susan. You're not any of the names we've been given. You're not male. You're not female. You're not, fluid, gender fluid. You're not, LGBTQAI plus. You're none of the labels that you choose for yourself or that anyone chooses for you. You're none of those things. You're pure consciousness. Now, we don't have the good language for that in English, but in Sanskrit, we have wonderful language for it. The experience of our true nature in Sanskrit is Sat Chit Ananda, pure being, pure consciousness, pure bliss. No adjectives, right? There's nothing to define us because there's just this one dynamic reality. Now, when we move from that Ehyeh, that I-ing, into the world of manifestation, then we see God in all these forms. So again, because Hinduism is so good at this, Hinduism talks about Brahman, the ultimate Godhead, without form, and Brahman with form. Brahman without form is the infinite, eternal, unlabelable I-ing, Ehyeh. And then Brahman with form is the unpronounceable Yud-He Vav-He that, is the manifest universe. And so it's both. So Rami is a manifesting of the divine. And as such, through meditation, through other things, I can drop Rami and just be the I. But if I say in my meditation, oh, I see it, I'm that. Well, then I'm not it, right? Because I still made this dualistic thing. But there are moments in our meditation practices when everything goes silent and there's no thought whatsoever. Now, you didn't stop it, you didn't make it happen, it's grace. But there are moments when the whole thing just ends and there's absolute silence. And then out of that silence, you return. And then you realize that when you were gone, you were in the I-ing. And then you come back and you see everything else as a man, including the self that you are when you come back, as a manifesting of this I-ing. And so you see everything as God. And when you do, then you know the first three questions. I am God. I come from God. When I die, I go back to where I always am, God. And then I know how to live godly because I only I can only see you as God. I can only see the trees as God. I can only see the rivers as God. I can't harm because everything is holy. So I can't, it's not like I say to myself, well, I could punch you in the face, but I choose not to. When I know who you really are and I know who I really am, the idea of punching you in the face, I mean, maybe I could force myself to imagine thinking about it, but the action is just not going to arise. It can't happen. So the core of the spiritual quest is the awakening of our own, or maybe awakening as this divinity, the realization of our true nature. That's the key. And religion is not always the best way to get there, because religion has, I mean, we're talking about organized religions like Judaism, Christianity, Islam, right? Religion has an ulterior motive. Judaism's primary concern is not to have me awaken as the unlabelable divine. Judaism's ultimate concern is to have me follow the rules of Judaism, to have me surrender my will to the will of the tradition run by the men who run the tradition. Christianity's ultimate, organized Christianity, right? Its ultimate goal is to make me the kind of Christian that whoever runs whatever denomination of Christianity we're talking about defines as a good Christian. And then they hold out salvation as the promise. But when you realize that it's all God, things like salvation and damnation and being chosen people and all of that disappears, because there's only God. And there's a radical liberation from all the narrow places that religion imposes upon us. I'm going to be giving a talk in a few weeks at a Catholic church. And one of the things they want to talk about is how do Jews deal with original sin? And the answer is really simple. We never thought of it, right? If you struggle under the weight of original sin, one way out is to become a Jew, or to join unity, or to find a religion that doesn't have original sin. Why do you bear the guilt, the burden of original sin? Because you belong to a group that from infancy, your infancy, told you that you have original sin. So when I talk about God, I'm not talking about religion. God is, in a sense, the way I'm talking about God, the way the mystics talk about God. God is antithetical to religion, because God liberates us from the narrow places that religion establishes as its domain. So I think I'm trying to keep an eye on the clock here, so because Reverend Rich told me what I've got to, my time frame. But in a sense, and I don't know if you want to call unity an organized religion or not, but groups like unity, mystical groups, groups that are, well, groups like unity, and there are other groups that are revolutionary like this, are anathema to organized religion, because they have at their heart a revolutionary message of thou art that, tat tvam asi, you are God, and God can't be put in a box. And if you can't be put in a box, you're part of a revolution that scares the world's leaders to death. And that's why I think it's so important that groups like yours and work that you do and that I do and that other people are doing to bring this radical kind of divinity alive in people's understanding. I mean, it's alive in the universe. It is the universe. But to help people realize there is an alternative way of understanding who we really are, a way that liberates us from the madness that is destroying humanity and the planet. And I'm going to stop with that, and you can take it further in the breakout groups. Thank you.